It's Warrnambool May Carnival week, and I'm here with none other than Nic McQualter. He's a racing fanatic, a jumps fanatic, and he's part of the Betfair community, obviously with the Great Racing Previews podcast. Nic, it's your favourite week of the year, isn't it?
Oh, this is Christmas for me. I love this week every single year. Which would be strange to some people because it's about 11 degrees right now, and it's cold and it's windy, but there's a little glimmer of sun, and this is just the best week of the year. You know, tomorrow we get stuck into it, and we have 30 of the best races. I think this is arguably the best carnival of the whole entire year. Don't worry about the spring, but that might be a little bit biased because I love my jumps. But yeah, I'm just really looking forward to what looks a good week, and hopefully we can back a few winners to aid the cause.
We're obviously here in front of a jump, and I think what we want to do today is give a little bit of education to the punters. Obviously, flat racing and jumps racing differ completely in terms of form and stuff. So I'm going to pick your brain here and figure out some stuff in terms of what you look for in terms of punting. But tell us about the race course here. What are some of the interesting nuances about the jumps course?
Yeah, so obviously we're over here just as they cross the road to enter the Brierly paddocks. And Warrnambool's just such a unique jumping course, obviously, because the minimum sort of steeple races around here, they all go through the Brierly paddock, and that's something that's unique to Warrnambool. It's not just a normal racetrack, and there is some horses that really grow a leg and really brighten up around Warrnambool because they get to cross the road and they get to work up the hill and down the hill, and it's not boring, I suppose you could say. It's what makes Warrnambool unique. Obviously, if you've never been to Warrnambool, you can go and watch the races up on top of the hill, and that's one of the most beautiful spectacles that you'll see on a race course. But yeah, Warrnambool's unique. It's got obviously its normal feel around the track, but especially when they enter Brierly paddock where we're standing right now as they cross the road, it's many good horses have been undone going up or down the hill the second time. So,
well, tell us a little bit, because we're standing in front of a jump. So keen to get you to explain what sort of jump we're standing in front of and why is it different, say, to the others that you might see in Europe or obviously the other ones that you see around the Bool.
Yeah, so this is what we call a steeplechase fence. So obviously you can see the difference with the sort of brushed fencing here. A normal hurdle, which is what a lot of horses sort of start their jumping careers over. They don't usually go to a steeplechase race to begin with. That's obviously at this height. So you can see, for me, I'm about 6'2". They're quite a high fence here, so it's a fair difference between a hurdle and a steeplechase fence. But yeah, they're obviously bigger and they're designed for, you've got to respect a steeplechase a little bit more. A lot of sort of horses, as they're coming through off their sort of flat careers into their jumping careers, they sort of don't respect the hurdles enough because they know they can go quicker. And obviously now with the one-fit hurdles that they've brought over from Europe, they're designed to be safer and more efficient. So if a horse hits it, it lays down, which can also be a little bit of a cheat a second time round because the horses know that they can just, sort of run across it and they don't have to jump it. But with these steeple fences, there's no mucking around. You can't go through these things. You've either got to jump it or you fall over. So,
and a fantastic nuance is obviously the horses have to cross the road.
Yes.
You've got the Tozer Road double up towards the top of the hill there, but it's actually amazing that come race day, some of the racetrack staff put sand across the road here. How do the horses handle that generally?
Yeah, so obviously for probably maybe 358 odd days a year, this is just a normal road that a lot of Warrnambool locals can drive through. But obviously for the next 3 days, it's shut off, and there's a bit of sand behind us here that there's obviously a little bit more that's going to be required. That's not going to do the job for 2 road closures. But yeah, it's very unique in the sense that they go from turf and they have a sand crossing and then back to the grass up through Brierly paddock. But I suppose that's also what makes it such an enjoyable spectacle. It's obviously very safe. It's a very thick layer of sand and the horses aren't in jeopardy of hurting themselves or anything like that. So their safety is paramount. But just another little niche to Warrnambool.
Well, let's talk about the jumps form. Obviously, you're an expert and you love to dive into the jumps. It has to differ completely, obviously, from flat racing because you've got different weight scale, you have different jockeys and a few jumps trainers in particular. But tell us a little bit about how you do form and get ready for the Bool or any other jumps meeting.
Yeah, so there's a few similarities in the same sense that your flat form and your jumping form can coincide a little bit. Obviously, a lot of horses don't necessarily just go straight to jumping for their preparations. They'll likely have a few lead-ups on the flat. But I think the times are changing a little bit in jumps racing. Back in the day, you could have a sort of a slow slug that's a 58er that wasn't being competitive on the flat that would go jumping. But nowadays, you sort of need a city-grade stayer. There's obviously the odd occasion where you don't need to, but the days are sort of past of just having a sort of slow horse. The jumping's become a lot more competitive and a lot stronger. So the form is still relevant, and obviously, there's horses that have come out here for Melbourne Cups that have ended up jumping of the like. But a few things that I sort of look for, I sort of, if a field comes out, I sort of just try and put the race and dissect it as one. I sort of try and look how the race is going to unfold. So essentially a little bit of a speed map, which can be all out the window in a 3,200, 3,450 metre plus race. I try and match up any intertwining form. I think that's important. And for me, if you can sort of marry up X horse has been beaten by X, you can I like to try and rank the form from there. Mm-hmm. And then it's a process of elimination. I try and get all my races down to sort of 3 or 4 chances maximum. And then obviously I tend to have a look at the market, wherever that may be. And I try and advantage some horses and disadvantage some horses and try and work out an opinion from there. I'm not afraid to have a couple of bets in a race against a horse that I think is under the market. And yeah, I think jumps racing is only going from strength to strength. The betting is quite competitive, and obviously if you think a horse is under the odds, you can go to Betfair and you can take them on.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So we talked a little bit about how you do form. Now I want to know, in terms of trainers, specialty trainers, obviously Simon Wild is unbelievable come Bool time, but who are the jumps trainers that punters should be looking out for?
So obviously you've got Simon Wild who goes really good around here, but Kieran is a freak in the sense that he can have 2-year-old group winners, and his brother Declan obviously loves his jump just as Kieran. Kieran was obviously a jumps jockey before he took to the training caper, and he's a force to be reckoned with. He quite doesn't have the team that he probably once had. I think they're probably going in a little bit of a rebuilding phase. They've lost a couple of their out-and-out superstars like Saunter Boy, who won the Galleywood last year, and a few of those type of horses. But you're always scared if there's a Kieran Ma runner in a race, but
especially if the Betfair market's shortening.
Yes, but there is a couple of other good trainers like Andrew Bobbin. He trains up in the Wimmera. He's quite a good jumps trainer. When the money usually goes on any of his jumpers, the market isn't usually too far away. And then you've got your Eric Musgroves, he probably doesn't have the top echelon of quality jumpers, but the sport needs people like him to have the numbers, because in some of the lesser meetings throughout the year, if he doesn't have 3 or 4 of his horses in there, well, there's not even each way betting. So
let's talk about the jockeys, where you are obviously think that they're ultimately part of the most important part of doing form. Tell us about the jockeys to look out for come May Carnival.
Yeah, well, unfortunately this year we're not going to have the best jockey going around in Steve Pateman. He's not far away from a return from serving a suspension, which has obviously been quite hard for me, because he's a bit like the J-Mac of the jumps. He's obviously on horses that are very well found in the market, but you can sort of bonus them because he's probably got 3 or 4 lengths on the other riders, and that's no offence to them. There's a good bunch of riders, but it's very much like J-Mac. He's King Kong, and he's just a bit better than the rest of the other jockeys, and that's much the same for Steve. But there is a good jockey room and that we will have this week. You've got the likes of Aaron Kuru, Willie McCarthy, Tommy Ryan, Will Gordon, who obviously is doing a little bit like what Johnny Allen used to do. Johnny Allen was a jumps jockey who went to the flat, obviously riding for Kieran, and Will does a lot of that for Paddy Payne at the moment as well. But the list doesn't stop there. You couldn't throw the silks to many jockeys in the jockey room and not be competitive. But yeah, I do think there is a couple of divisions, and if you're around the Aaron Kurus and Will Gordons and Tommy Ryans of the like this week with Willie McCarthy, I don't think we'll be too far wrong.
Perfect. Well, let's get into some race previews. We're going to preview the 3 features across the jumps, and the first one is on the Tuesday. It's the Brierly. Talk to us about the Brierly. Who are the key chances in that one, and have you got a betting strategy?
Yep. So obviously where we are now, this is where the race is probably going to start to take complexion tomorrow. And I think as the market elects sort of tell you right now, Stern Idol is going to be extremely hard to beat. He's just an absolute tank of a horse. If you're here this week and you haven't seen this horse in person, I suggest you go down to the tie-up stalls. He's as big as you'll see. He's built like a dead set jumbo truck, and his ability takes nothing away from his looks. He's a superstar horse, and I expect him to be winning the Brierly tomorrow. I don't necessarily agree 100% with the market. I think there's a horse in there that's second elect at the moment with Balex1. I think he's quite short for a horse who is trying to do the double, the Brierly into the annual on Thursday. I think he's just well enough found for a horse who's trying to do the double. I don't think he's necessarily going to be 100%. Probably quick enough is the right word to put it to win the Brierly tomorrow. So I think there's angles to take him on a lay for the win and a lay on the place. And I think Mighty Oasis is probably the smoky that the market's underestimating at the moment. He's about $10 plus. We're about $2.50 the place, and he's a horse who does grow a leg here at Warrnambool that we alluded to before. He does quite improve on his form as he gets to Warrnambool, and his form to date has been really good this preparation. So I'm sort of going to work around a win bet with Stern Idol. I think you can sort of take Balex1 on at the current price, and I think around the each way for Mighty Oasis, more so at the place, there's value to be had there. And we've left out Britannicus, obviously, who won the race last year. So I think the top 4 or 5 in betting are all going to have their claims, but it all just depends which side of the fence you want to sit on.
Next one, we're going to talk about the Galleywood. What are your thoughts there?
So I think the Galleywood this year has come up quite competitive. Yet again, markets are slowly being drip-fed through us this afternoon. I think Bedford does deserve to be favourite. He's a horse who's taken it all before him, and I think he's really going to improve into his season this year. He's got the scalps of Sauna Boy, who obviously won the Galleywood last year. He beat him at Pakenham at a couple of meetings after here a year ago, and I think he deserves to be favourite, and I think he's going to be extremely hard to beat. But I think the horse that the market's undervaluing at the moment is Chains of Honour. I think he's at a bit of a silly price, and I thought the race was probably going to be towards those two. I think Blandford Lad, he jumped well at Pakenham, obviously a fortnight ago, and I think he'll be well placed again. But I sort of want to centre my early thoughts around those two at this point.
Yep. And finally, the big one, the Grand Annual. Who's going to win that one?
So Stern Idol's in the market at the moment. I don't believe he is going to run at this point. And if he does, I think he's a proposition where we can take him on. He's probably my favourite jumper, but I got sucked into him last year in this race, and I thought he was just going to be too good for him, and he was, but not for 5,500 metres, and that's just a little bridge too far for him. I think he's a little too brilliant for that sort of trip. So if he takes his place, which I don't think he will, I think we can take him on, and at the current quote of less than even money, I think that's great betting to take him on as a lay proposition. But there was sort of 3 horses that I've outlined that have come up at real big odds at the moment, and I think that's Vanguard from the Simon Wild stable. He ran well in the race last year. I think he ran 4th off the top of my head. I think he's going to be in this race up to his ears. Rockstar Ronnie, last year's champion. He's come up at quite big odds, so I'm happy to entertain him. He obviously has the penalty for winning the race last year of 3.5 kilos, but he's going real well, and I know this is the set plan to defend his title, so I'm happy to be with him. And Cross Hill obviously ran 3rd in this race last year, and I think he's come up at silly prices. I thought he nearly could be my on-top selection, and I think he's poking around at sort of $35 some places at the moment. So, I can't sort of get my head around those prices at the moment. Obviously, there's still a little bit of water to go under the bridge, and we need to nail those selections down come closer to race time, which we will, and the punters will be able to get our content closer to the jump. But at the moment, I think the annual looks a very good betting race, and if in doubt we are in trouble, I think there's enough value that we might be able to put ourselves on the right side of the ledger, but hopefully we're in front and doesn't get to that point.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting, and everyone should know that your watch list is going to be up on Betfair on the featured watch list page. We're also going to get your expert tips into the app, which I'm looking forward to. I'm definitely going to follow you throughout the carnival, especially your lay selections. I reckon you've made some great points there. Besides that, let's finish just on one last thing, advice for punters out there that are punting over the next couple of days.
Well, if you're here and you've never been to Warrnambool, it is an absolute staying test. Just like the Grand Annual, there is 33 flights, there is 30 races. and it's brought underdone many a man before, and I'm sure it will in the future. It's very easy to get excited at Warrnambool. It's a big carnival, and just got to pace yourself. Sometimes you just got to just refrain a little bit, settle underneath your rider, and just do your best. It is a staying test, and you just got to be patient. Patience is a virtue.
Absolutely love it, Nico. Well, looking forward to seeing you in the racing previews, guys. And for all of Nico's tips and more info, make sure you head to the Betfair hub, and also to see Nico's tips, download the Betfair app now.
What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.